Hey guys, Scott here. Today we're going to talk about our old pal, the nurse, and how she's not really unanimously seen as the best killer in the game anymore. Now, I'm not saying a lot of people don't think she's the best, because a lot of people absolutely do think that, and frankly, it's an opinion I'm not even really going to argue with. The point is, she's no longer unanimously, objectively seen as the best, and there was a time in this game's history, I would say for most of the game's lifespan, where Nurse was just, if you asked anybody who the best killer is, it's Nurse. It's Nurse, it's Nurse, 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 Nurse. The answer is always, always Nurse. In fact, the only time I really found that this started dragging a bit and sometimes people started entertaining Blight as the best is the period where Nurse's range add-ons were nerfed and Blight's, Compound 33 and Alk Ring and Adrenaline Vial, all those things were not nerfed yet. That was sort of the period where people started going, well, maybe actually she's not the best anymore. And it really has kind of only perpetuated from there. Again, I'm not saying that she is not the best. It's very, very possible she's the best. My whole point with this video is she is no longer, without a doubt, unanimously seen to be the best killer in the game. And I wanted to go over why that has changed. Because really, the nurse herself has not really changed in a long time. In fact, Blight hasn't really changed in a long time either. So it means the game must have changed around her. Now, Crossu is obviously a very big thorn in her side in terms of being the best killer, because at least prior to the small nerf that she got, I think Crossu was the best killer in the entire game. However, she did have her vaulting nerfed somewhat significantly, at least on the pallet vaults, to the point where I'm not comfortable saying she's like objectively the best anymore. I kind of need more time to figure this out. So I'm not really sure anymore. The whole point is they're all kind of mixed for top three. The top three, without a doubt, is Nurse, Blight, Crossu, but I don't really know the order anymore, and it's just interesting to me that Nurse is not really seen as the best. But in order to further this conversation, we need to compare Nurse to her competition with Blight and Crossu and go over how they can do things better than she can and how she does stuff better than they can. So in a nutshell, I do want to say, in a vacuum, an ideal scenario with no mistakes, basically if DBD was a tool-assisted speedrun or something like that, Nurse theoretically is still the best killer in the game. Because if you have a killer that can just ignore walls and a tool-assisted speedrun can just blink directly on top of people because they know where everybody is and stuff like that, then yes, Nurse would be the best. But obviously, that's not how reality works unless you're just straight up cheating. You can't see people through walls, and you can't, just know where everybody is to do an exact perfect blink every single time. And Nurse is more punished for missing than her competition, I would say. Unless you did like a full 5 charges of your rush with Blight. For the most part, I'd say missing a Nurse blink can feel pretty bad, especially compared to like Crossu, where if she misses, an intestinal whip, like, okay, I'll try again in 1 second. Who gives a shit? If she misses with her infection, and okay, I'll try again in 0.1 second. It just doesn't matter. So when you talk about how good a killer is, you have to accept margins of error from a human being, because even the best nurse on the planet is not going to hit every single blink. It just doesn't happen. You can watch the best comp players in tournaments. They will miss a lot of blinks, and it's because they're not perfect robots that can just see people through walls. So when they do miss, they are punished pretty heavily for it. So again, we have to compare her to her competition. And just for fun, I just did a bunch of random tests versus bots just to see, like, in an ideal scenario, how quickly some killers can get hits, how quickly they can cross the map, just things like that. So for the first metric I used, I just compared how quickly with Lethal Pursuer can these killers get a hit from the match actually starting. And strangely enough, I just did 5 tests with each of them just for the hell of it, just to account for variations and spawns and stuff like that. And the average for all of them was between 24 and 27 seconds. I think Nurse had the single fastest at 21 on a very small map. I think it was Midwich. And then Crossu had the longest at 29 because I missed an infection hit. So other than that, though, like, the margin of error is a couple of seconds here. So really, in terms of the match starting and them getting immediate snowballing pressure from getting a quick hit, they are all very, very, very close to each other. So it's so close that it's literally plus or minus a couple of seconds margin of error for spawns and things like that, to the point where I don't even think it's a valid discussion point because the differences are so minor. So I'm just going to say they're all pretty equally as good as each other in terms of getting a hit at the start of the match. And that can, again, vary depending on the map, but it's very, very, very close. So that is really a plus to nobody. Now, sustained map control. This is where Nurse actually starts to falter. And I think a lot of the reason people are seeing Nurse as not unanimously the best anymore is actually, strangely enough, due to a butterfly effect of the comp scene becoming more popular. If you've noticed, a lot of the most popular content creators in DBD now are not, the JRMs of the world. I'm not saying JRM's not still amazing, but like a lot of the newer content creators are people that are more comp focused, and that has grown more than just the casual chill people. And because of that, that has a side effect of making more people watch competitive DBD play, and that has a side effect of making people say, hey, Nurse is losing a lot of these games. How is that happening? And then when you see what they're doing, it's extremely boring, but extremely effective. Any very, very good player, even players better than me, will tell you Nurse's main weakness is macro gameplay. And I do think survivors on average are becoming more knowledgeable about this. For those who don't know what macro gameplay is, it's basically every decision that anybody makes in the match that's not related to a chase. So that's micro gameplay. When you're being chased by someone, knowing a check spot for Shack, that's a micro gameplay decision. And frankly, these things are a lot easier to learn than macro. I've talked about this before, but if you're learning a check spot for a tile, that's it. It's a binary. You stand here and look at both sides. That's the objectively correct thing to do. There's no other decisions to be made there. Macro gameplay is way more nuanced and complicated. It's, hey, do I slug this person now? Do I camp this person for second stage? Do I tunnel this guy? Do I risk this? Does this guy have this perk? If I slug him here, he's going to have Unbreakable. Did they set up an exponential earlier? Am I chasing someone into a dead zone? Are they like, there are so many decisions that go into every movement you do in Dead by Daylight, and all of those things are macro decisions. And that is Nurse's biggest weakness, because even the best players on the planet realize that if a good Nurse is chasing them, they're going to die in 15 to 20 seconds, basically no matter what. It doesn't matter how good they are, unless they're on like Hawkins or Larry's or something. They are on a very strict time limit to how long they're going to be alive, because like I said, a good Nurse is not going to make as many mistakes as a bad Nurse. So you're very, very limited. So what people do in these comp matches is, I'm sure you've heard the phrase comp corner before, but basically they will know they're going to die and they will choose to die in an advantageous position for them. That's the main weakness of Nurse. She can be, very easily pre-ran or pre-stealthed or any of these things. With Crossu and Blight, you can't really do that. If I see someone 50 meters away with Crossu or Blight, I'm going to be on them in 6 seconds. They don't have time to get anywhere to hide or to pre-run or to go to a better spot. I'm just going to show up in their face and just start doing my shit right there. With Nurse, though, her map control is not great. Just like, there's a lot of downtime in between that, and typically you'd want to use only one blink, because if you use two, forget the exact ratio, but like it's not as efficient travel-wise and cooldown-wise, so you're basically doing one blink at a time for map control. Now, once you get in range of the survivor, now you're more likely to down them than the other two killers without a doubt, but the whole point is getting into that position. People are starting to become smarter about that. If they know a Nurse is beginning to approach them at all, they will start pre-stealthing or pre-hiding or just running to a fucking corner to die. And at that point, the Nurse has to go so far out of her way, and she's not fast enough compared to the other killers to make up for that, that she really starts to suffer. And this is how she actually loses in comp matches. And this is not even something you need incredible coordination for. Even as a solo queue survivor, you can do these things. If you have a very good Nurse that is beginning to get near you to start to chase you, you should assume she's going to find you, and you should assume she's going to down you very fast. But what you can do is find a generator that's been completed, for example, and just go run near that. Just in whatever corner that generator is, just go there and die. You would be surprised how incredibly effective that is at beating Nurse in the long term. Because if you actually do the math, even though you'll last 10 seconds less in a chase, you probably wasted 20 seconds of the Nurse doing that, because the time it takes her to do that and then get back into the map is longer than the time you would have gained looping her longer near a gen being worked on, for example. So these are examples of macro gameplay that hurt the Nurse a lot more than the other two killers she's competing with in the top three. With Blight and Crossu, I don't care how much you're pre-running or aware that they're coming, you have a few seconds before they're on your ass. Doesn't really matter. They're going to be there. Now, again, it takes them slightly longer to get hits, but they're able to get in position so much better than Nurse, unless it's like Midwich or something, that it's just such a massive advantage compared to her. So Nurse's weakness being good macro gameplay is really something that is very important. And like I said, I think the community has started to learn a lot more. And because of that, I don't think she's universally the best. Again, it's very possible she still is the best, and depending on the map, she likely still is. If you get a very, open, small map like Wrecker's Yard, for example, I would still put my money on the nurse over Blight and Crossu. I just think overall, like Crossu, for example, is just safer. She is much easier to play. The nurse, who already is not very easy to play. She's far less punished for her mistakes, which everyone, even the best players on the planet, do. And her safety around loops is actually insane due to her third-person camera as well, because the nurse can't see through walls. Even though she possesses the ability to go through them and down somebody, she can't see through the wall, so she still has to make a guess. And good nurses are very good at mitigating the downsides of guessing, but a Crossu doesn't even have to do that. You can just sit in third person and check spot the survivors, and a lot of the time as Crossu, you don't even have to really do anything. You can just sit there and wait in third person, and the survivor will basically just mind game themselves and you just hit them. I can't stress how incredibly strong Crossu's third person is based on the height she actually has. She can see over most loops in the entire game, which is insane. That is like a power in and of itself. I can't stress how insanely strong that is. And the only reason I'm not saying that Crossu is without a doubt, not the best killer in the entire game, is because she was just recently nerfed and her vaulting over pallets was made a bit weaker. Other than that, I just tested her for like 4 hours after the nerf. I didn't really notice a difference. There was one time I collided with something that I was trying to hug around that I probably wouldn't have collided with prior to that, but that was in like 4 hours of playing her. Other than that, she felt basically the same. Now, the main reason I'm not going to settle on Crossu ending up being the best overall is because she is slated to get another nerf here. And there is a comment a lot of people leave in my YouTube comments or on Twitter, for example, kind of like this, where people say, why all this uproar about Crossu and not for Nurse or Blight? And the answer is because Nurse and Blight are old. They've just been in the game for half a decade to almost a decade. I've already talked about them 5,000 times. Like years and years and years ago. You know how many anti-Blight videos I have? How many videos about how a Mega Blink nurse was the most ridiculous thing in the game? This was just so long ago that I think these people legit didn't even start playing when I was making these videos. These killers are so old that's the reason I'm not talking about them anymore. Literally, nurse is like just the crazy aunt that you're just like sitting in the room like, dude, your aunt is going through walls. Shouldn't you address that? And you're just like, that's just our crazy Aunt Sally. Just let her do her thing. It's just been in the game so long, I'm tired of talking about it. That's it. So it's not some grand mystery or agenda here where I'm like, why am I letting these killers be so strong? And I'm not talking about, them being a problem. It's like, yeah, because I already did 50 times. They're just old. Crossu is the new talking point, so I'm talking about her now. But if you want my current up-to-date opinion, yeah, I still think Nurse and Blight are too overtuned. That's my actual current opinion. So that's just not worth talking about him because, like I said, Nurse came out almost a fucking decade ago. I just don't care anymore. It's just been so long. But overall, I wanted to just touch up on this point where Nurse is not really seen unanimously as the best. And if I had to summarize it, it's because people have become more aware of her macro gameplay weaknesses. And again, that doesn't mean she is not the best. It just means she is possibly not the best. With killers like Crossu rivaling her, it also just introduces competition. So despite the fact she hasn't really changed very much over the years, the community has become more aware of macro gameplay, and she has other contenders that released after her that have kind of mirrored her or at least come close to her in strength. So those are the overall talking points here. Again, if you still think Nurse is the best, I'm not even going to argue. It's very possible she is, but I just wanted to entertain the possibility that she's not unanimously the best anymore and why that was it. So that's it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.